Second practice in Baku delivered a different shade at the top of the timing screens than we've grown used to. Instead of a Ferrari red or Red Bull navy, it was Mercedes leading the way. Lewis Hamilton set the benchmark around the Baku city circuit with a 1:41.293, the fastest tour of the weekend so far, and a lap that immediately set the tone for a session full of razor-thin margins and razor-close brushes with concrete. The storylines were everywhere. Charles Leclerc, who holds the circuit's key speed benchmarks with the fastest race lap from 2019 and the outright qualifying record on his way to pole in 2023, looked ominously quick on the soft tyre, even while kissing the walls at the notoriously unforgiving Turn 3 and Turn 4. McLaren lived on both ends of the spectrum, blistering pace on low fuel but high drama in the castle-side sectors, with Lando Norris collecting the barriers and Oscar Piastri twice tagging the walls at Turn 15. A long list of drivers sampled the Baku bite. Liam Lawson locked up and smoked his tyres. Lance Stroll gave the Armco a thumping reminder of who's boss. Franco Colapinto overcommitted on entry, Pierre Gasly had a heart-in-mouth moment through Turn 18, and even Hamilton had a miscue through Turn 7. It was classic Azerbaijan, long straights that reward minimal drag, 90-degree corners that punish the slightest misrotation, and a medieval castle section that demands millimetre-perfect precision. Temperatures and tyre behaviour added a layer of complexity. "All right, they were all quite hot," came one matter-of-fact note over the radio, as teams wrestled with warm-up windows, brake blanking, and downforce trims that yield tenths on the kilometre-long flat-out blast but cost confidence where the walls close in. Conditions and tyre story. The second practice hour opened under warm, dry conditions and a track that had cleaned up significantly since FP1. With so much full throttle time, brake and tyre temperatures escalated quickly, making the window for a peak soft tyre lap surprisingly narrow. Drivers who nailed it early on a prepared track found grip and confidence. Those who needed a second push often discovered the fronts greased over and the rears fragile on traction. On long runs, graining at the front was visible on the softs for several cars, pushing many teams toward medium tyre race simulations in the back half of the session. You could see the correlation play out corner by corner. At Turn 1 and Turn 3, both heavy braking left-handers, the front left took a beating with repeated lockups. Turn 15, the downhill left that has claimed so many sessions, became the day's hotspot for flat spots and barrier taps as the fronts cooled on the straight and then were asked for maximum deceleration and rotation in one breath. By the time cars reached Turn 16 and powered toward the line, rear stability became the limiting factor. It's little surprise Alexander Albon was fishtailing there as he opened the taps for the endless run to the finish. Mercedes headlined the timing. Lewis Hamilton's 1 minute 41.293 seconds was the session's headline. It wasn't a hero lap plucked out of nowhere. The seven-time champion built toward it, dialing in confidence through the castle, opening the braking at Turn 3 and Turn 4, and getting impressive rotation without overstressing the fronts. On the radio, there was the usual methodical back and forth, check the car, copy, box. After a moment, that likely involved a brush with the barrier, but the underlying message was clear. Mercedes arrived with a stable, drivable platform in low fuel trim. George Russell shadowed the effort with a lap just behind. His best lap was still good enough for P2, just 7/100ths back from his seven-time world champion teammate, showing the Mercedes pair were working in a tight corridor. Russell did, however, have a scare at Turn 12 on one of his flyers. Understeer wide, rear tyres swinging on the way out, the car fishtailing as he gathered it up. Another lucky escape, the commentary went, and it was. Baku punishes over-rotation instantly, and Russell carried just enough speed to brush the danger without paying the price. The intriguing wrinkle in the silver camp is the presence of Kimi Antonelli, who slotted into the mix with a quietly solid performance. The raw pace gap to Hamilton and Russell appeared just under half a second in like-for-like laps according to one snapshot in session, which for a driver still gathering Baku mileage counts as both promising and very much on plan. Mercedes' long-run pace looked slightly more subdued than their one-lap sharpness, with a hint of rear degradation on the mediums, but their baseline for qualifying is clearly competitive. Ferrari's speed profile. If Mercedes owned the headline time, Ferrari owned the menacing undertone. Charles Leclerc, the king of Baku laps over one lap in recent seasons, looked potent on the soft compound. He kissed the wall at turn 3 and soon after at turn 4. Classic Baku limit-finding moments rather than desperation. But the speed was there. The Scuderia's rotation in slow 90-degree corners remains a calling card, and the SF's traction out of turn 16 looked tidy on the onboard replays. Carlos Sainz, meanwhile, had a session that told both sides of the Ferrari story. Through the meat of the hour, he built rhythm and arrived at a set of laps that, in one classification snapshot, put him P1 in a cluster featuring the midfield chaos behind. But he also clipped the entry at turn 16 on a later run, a reminder that the front-end support is sharp and the rears need careful management on corner exit, especially on a used soft. In traffic and on cooldowns, Ferrari did occasionally get boxed in. More than once their drivers had to abandon laps as the train backed up from turns 14 through 16. Oliver Behrman added his own chapter to the Ferrari-adjacent narrative. Standing in again and pushing hard, he bailed at turn 8 after a big lock-up, radioing, "I'm locking front everywhere. Something's wrong." The reply, "Okay, we'll check," was calm, but the moment underscored how sensitive the car was to front axle temperatures and balance through the castle entry. Once the fronts glazed, committing to the tight left-right-left of 8 to 10 becomes a leap of faith. McLaren, high risk, high reward. McLaren's day will be remembered through the lens of Lando Norris's brushes with the walls. First came a barrier kiss on exit of turn 2, a place where traction and track crown can combine to surprise, and then the bigger hit at turn 4. I'm in the wall, tyres gone, yeah, okay, we'll box this lap. The debrief was blunt. Understeer, bit of throttle, but he's not turned enough. He's not got the rotation on the front end, and off we go into the barriers. It read like a classic Baku scenario. The car skated into the corner with the front not biting. A touch of throttle unsettled the rear just as the wall approached, and the margin vanished. That was Lando's session done. Oscar Piastri, the current Drivers' Championship leader, wasn't without drama. He tapped both front and rear tyres at turn 15 on separate passes, just enough contact to scuff the sidewalls and raise heart rates. Turn 15 demands confidence in brake release and a car that rotates cleanly. Piastri's laps suggested McLaren were balancing front axle bite with rear stability, a juggling act that changes lap to lap with wind and track evolution. Even so, on outright speed when the softs were switched on, the MCL picked up time relentlessly down the straight, and their middle sector, when clean, looked like a strength. Red Bull and the sister camp Max Verstappen's raw lap count was purposeful rather than showy, and his best effort slotted behind a Ferrari-Mercedes cluster in one of the session's provisional reads. It wasn't a headline day for him, but the Red Bull's long-run discipline appeared neat. Shock settings and brake-by-wire maps that keep the car calm into the big stops pay off here. Among the other Red Bull family drivers, Liam Lawson had one of the afternoon's more dramatic brake moments at turn 15, smoking his tyres and taking to the escape road there. It was the sensible decision, better to bail than flirt with the barrier, but the flat spots likely ended that set's life. On the VCARB side, Isaac Hadjar and Yuki Tsunoda hustled through a program that alternated between low-fuel push laps and medium-tyre race sims. In one classification snapshot, P1 for Sainz, and he was ahead of Piastri, Hadjar, Tsunoda, Bortoleto, Gasly, Stroll, Hülkenberg, Alonso and Colapinto, which tells the story of a mixed midfield, tiny gaps and big swings depending on who nailed the prep lap and toe. Tsunoda looked particularly tidy through turns 5 to 6, where direction change rewards rear stability, and Hadjar rode the ragged edge at turn 3 without incident. Williams, one fishtail and one wide line. Turn 16 was unkind to Alex Albon in one notable moment. Fishtailing through the corner captures it well. He turned in a fraction hot, caught the first slide, then the second, and only just kept the car within the white lines. Over one lap, the Williams still looked slippery in a straight line, a design choice that suits Baku's long runs to the line, but the cost came in the mid-corner rotation that drivers crave in the castle sequence. Rookie Franco Colapinto provided one of the session's more visible heartstoppers with a too-wide line at turn 15. The margin there compresses so quickly that a half-metre missed at turn-in becomes 1.5 meters at the apex, and the escape route beckons. He chose sensibly, took the runoff, and lived to push again. It was, all told, an education hour for the youngsters and a timely reminder that Baku is no respecter of reputations. Alpine, two different adventures. Pierre Gasly's hairy moment through turn 18 came on a fast lap where the car's rear stepped just as he asked for maximum throttle to begin the long drag. He caught it, but it cost the lap. Esteban Ocon, in contrast, delivered a string of clean laps that placed him in the thick of the top 10 in one of the session's timing reads. Alpine's long-run balance looked a bit kinder on mediums than softs. When they bolted the softer tyre, the fronts overheated across the castle and into turn 15, forcing earlier braking points and inviting under-rotation. Aston Martin, big whacks and veteran calm. Lance Stroll gave the barriers a huge whack, a familiar Baku sentence in green. The entry into the castle complex rewards aggression up to the last millisecond, and Stroll took that millisecond maybe a fraction too deep. He carried on, but the car needed a check. Fernando Alonso, meanwhile, kept the program moving with cleaner laps and a focus on long-run stability. The Aston Martin looked sensitive to wind shifts at turn 12 and on the exit of turn 16, where small gusts translate to big moments at 280 km/h plus. Haas. Threading the needle. Nico Hülkenberg's name appeared in the crowded midfield lists, a sign of a Haas package that often comes alive on street circuits with big braking zones. The team's challenge, as always, is rear tyre life over long runs. On mediums, the degradation curve looked steep past lap 8, while on softs, the initial bite was confidence-inspiring but faded quickly if the driver missed a prep window. Rookies and rising names. Oliver Behrman, big lock-up at turn 8 and a candid radio. I'm locking front everywhere. Something's wrong, but good underlying pace when the fronts were in the window. Kimi Antonelli. Within striking range of the Mercedes reference laps, solid braking discipline, and only a small deficit in the castle sector as he built confidence. Franco Colapinto overcooked the entry at turn 15, took to the escape, and gathered experience in traffic management. Gabriel Bortoleto found himself aggrieved in traffic. Nice one, he's cruising in the racing line. As a rival compromised a push lap. Still, his sector progression showed he was learning when to find clean air and when to back out. Turn-by-turn pressure points. Turn 2, traction-limited exit that caught Norris out on one of his prep-to-push transitions. Turn 3, heavy stop with camber that tempts lockups. Leclerc and others brushed the wall on exit while exploring rotation limits. Turn 4, another 90 right where Norris had his bigger kiss with the barrier. Understeer plus throttle equals shrinking margin. Turn 7, Hamilton went awry here once, highlighting how tight the right-hand approach is after a fast build-up. Turn 8, Castle. Behrman's lock-up moment. Once the fronts glaze, it's wiser to bail than to brave the needle with reduced bite. Turn 12, Russell's big moment. Understeer in, rear swing on exit, illustrating the car's knife-edge transition from rotation to traction. Turn 15, the session's trouble magnet. Piastri tagged both ends, Lawson smoked tyres and took the escape. Stroll clattered the barrier, Colapinto ran deep. Turn 16, Albon's fishtail, Sainz clipping the entry later. Small errors here echo down the kilometre-long straight and destroy lap times. Turn 18 and the flat-out sweep. Gasly's scare while the car was light and fast. Any rear step here becomes a high-speed correction test. Radio highlights. All right, they were all quite hot. Dash, check the car. Copy, box. I'm in the wall. Tyres gone dash. Yeah. Okay, we'll box this lap. I'm locking front everywhere. Something's wrong. Okay, we'll check. Nice one. He's cruising in the racing line. These snippets tell the temperature and traffic story as much as the stopwatch does. Tyres cooking, drivers finding the edge, and the eternal Baku battle to get a clean lap. Provisional order snapshots. The session's timing graphics and trackside commentary produced two overlapping snapshots, reflecting push lap timing, lap deletions, and evolving run plans. Based on the draft notes, Hamilton led the way with a 1:41.293. One red had George Russell's best lap good enough for P2, just 0.07 seconds back from his 7-time world champion teammate, with Charles Leclerc rapid on softs despite wall kisses. A mid-session rundown cited Hamilton from Leclerc, with the Mercedes duo of Russell and Antonelli almost half a second back in P3 and P4 respectively, then Behrman, Verstappen, Lawson, Ocon, Albon and Norris. A second snapshot called out P1 for Sainz ahead of Piastri, Hajar, Tsunoda, Bortoleto, Gasly, Stroll, Hülkenberg, Alonso and Colapinto. Taken together, those snapshots confirm the broader picture. Mercedes carried the cleanest single-lap execution window. Ferrari's peak was ferocious but came with the usual street circuit knife edge. McLaren were fast but ragged. Red Bull's baseline looked steady, and the midfield compressed into tenths where traffic, tow and tyre prep decided everything. What it means for qualifying. 2 games will be decisive. The Baku slipstream from turn 16 to the line can be worth multiple tenths. Teams will choreograph pairs or trios to find clean air in Sector 2 and a draft in Sector 3. Expect messy outlaps and last-second dawdling before the final push. Tyre prep is king. Softs need a precise warm-up. Too gentle and they never bite at turn 3. Too aggressive and they're already overheated when you reach turn 15. Watch for drivers starting the lap with heavy brake dragging and aggressive weaving, then calming the fronts through the castle to keep them alive for the downhill stop. Castle confidence decides grid slots. The field is so tight that the commitment through turns 8 to 10 will separate rows. Hamilton, Leclerc and Verstappen traditionally harvest tenths there. A newcomer like Antonelli or Behrman will aim to be within shouting distance without overstepping. Risk versus reward. Norris's session-ending tap is the cautionary tale. Piastri's double kiss at T15 is the bolder version of the same lesson. Expect a few red flags in qualifying if drivers push the rotation envelope too far on cold fronts. Long-run hints. Mercedes looked slightly hotter on rears in medium stint sims. Ferrari's fronts asked for careful management into T15. Red Bull's balance was kind. If Sunday is green flag heavy, the undercut could be potent with fresh mediums, but only if you can clear traffic quickly. Drivers to watch. Lewis Hamilton, comfortable and precise with a banker already in the pocket. If he stitches Sector 2 perfectly, pole contention is real. Charles Leclerc, the Baku qualifying ace. If Ferrari give him a clean track and he keeps the turn 3/4 kisses to millimeters, the outright record could wobble again. George Russell, pace is there, the T12 wobble shows the limit, nail that entry and he's within a whisker of the front row. Oscar Piastri, championship leader with a brave right foot. If McLaren settles the front-end bite into T15, he's a threat. Max Verstappen, quietly efficient. Expect the lap to appear when it counts, traffic permitting. The rookies, Antonelli, Behrman, Colapinto, Bortoleto, Hajar, all flashed speed. The qualifying trick is to bank a lap before chasing a hero one. Even a small toe can transform their grid spot. The Baku paradox. Baku always asks the same unfair question. Can you extract maximum speed on the straight without sacrificing the grip you need in the city's tightest corners? Teams chase lower drag and trim the rear wing, then armour the fronts for stability into turns 3 and 15. Drivers push brake temps on the outlap, then beg them to cool before the castle. The circuit punishes both caution and bravado. Too careful and you're nowhere. Too brave and you're in carbon splinters. Second practice laid bare that paradox. Mercedes chose confidence on initial turn-in and got the lap time. Ferrari sharpened the nose and danced with walls. McLaren rode the line and paid once. Red Bull kept its powder dry. The midfield was a blender. If qualifying follows the FP2 pattern, the front row could be decided by a tenth and the midfield by a toe. Final take. Mercedes set the FP2 tone, Hamilton's 1:41.293 the day's gold standard. Ferrari remain the ultimate one-lap tease in Baku, rapid enough to frighten the clocks, edgy enough to frighten the pit wall. McLaren's ceiling is high but fragile. They'll need a clean run and a perfect prep. Red Bull lurk within range, with race pace perhaps their stronger card. The rookies made Baku-sized strides while discovering Baku-sized consequences for half mistakes. Turn 15 is the judge and jury, turn 16 is the executioner. The main straight is the appeal that sometimes saves you. When the sun drops and the grip comes up for qualifying, expect traffic chess, brake temp theatrics, and 1 or 2 laps you'll want to watch back in slow motion. Baku remains the same old lesson. You don't beat the circuit, you pay it the exact amount of respect it demands and no more.